What you seek is never found in obtaining pleasure or avoiding pain. Non-duality, Lisa Cairns. Yes. Very good. Very good. Yeah. So I'm so indoctrinated in non-duality that it seems so bizarre to me that people believe in themselves. So most people in this planet walk around believing that they are somebody inside the body and that they have to navigate and direct their life to have a good life. I must have a good life. And that's such an interesting notion, because that's not something that a bird thinks or a dog thinks or a gorilla or a cat. That's something very specific to the human species. So they first of all think, I am an entity inside this body. So I am somebody that is doing life. That's number one. And then secondly, it's my job to create a happy life. And all of these concepts are actually very bizarre, but they're mainstream in society, particularly in Western culture. Maybe in some other cultures there's more a survival basis. But in Western culture, it is your job to create your happiness. And if you don't, you are a failure and there's something wrong with you. There is something wrong with you. You are doing a bad job. Even in non-duality, you get into that mentality. It's your job to make your happiness. But who? There is a life happening. There is a character that exists, which isn't separate from the physical body. And the character, you could say, is made up of behaviors and thought patterns and stories and memories. But that's something that appears from the body. It's not like a soul inside, like some sort of ethereal ghost that lives inside the body. And that's so confusing to the intellect, because to most people, what it feels like is that consciousness and the person are one and the same thing. And that is the fundamental mistake, that there is a consciousness that is attached to you, that you are conscious. And that's not actually true. There is consciousness, and in that a you, an illusory you arises that isn't solid, that's always in flux and changing. Isn't that fantastic? It's the best news. Because if there is no you, then it's not your responsibility to make your life happy. You are not guilty, you are not responsible, you are not shameful. There is life happening. And every movement, everything of life, of your life, is the dance of this divine, unknowable energy that cannot be described. Yeah. So what you truly are, isn't separate from life itself. The character is seemingly separate. So there is a Lisa character here that is separate from the computer and the table. But that is only an appearance. On the ultimate level, your consciousness, that which is experiencing now, that which is hearing and seeing and perceiving, is not a thing in time. It's not a person moving in time. It's not a memory, a thought, an idea, or a feeling. It is this consciousness which is uncontainable. It never starts, it never stops. It's not a thing, and it's all things. And that consciousness doesn't belong to brain. It doesn't belong to you. It doesn't belong to something. It's not found. It is nothing, not a thing, which is also love. I know that sounds like a massive jump. How does that come to love? Because it is. Your underlying sense of being is love. It is love. It's totally unconditioned love. The person is in conditions. The person is in, you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back. You put on my sun cream, I'll put on your sun cream. You look after my children, I'll look after your children. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's the nature of being an animal. It's the same for the dog. Khaleesi is like, you feed me, I'll shit in your garden. You feed me, I'll bark at all the passers-by. You feed me, I'll rub my scent all over your body. You know, fair deal. But on the ultimate, like when she looks at me in every moment, it's absolute unconditioned love. Because that's the nature of no thing, which is everything, or the nature of the looking, the perceiver. So you're sitting there, you think you're looking at me, but who is the one looking at me? Right here, right now. Who are you? Yeah, we can talk about the character and the chakras and the dynamics, and that's fascinating. But right here, right now, who are you? And it might be seen not by anybody, that the looking and the looked at, are one and the same thing. There is no division between that experiencing and everything. It's infinite. It's non-divided. It's so big, it's not even infinite or finite. It's beyond that. And that's the experience. The experience isn't separation. That's the lie. That's what your thoughts tell you. That's what your ideas tell you. But it's not the truth. The truth is always this moment, and in this moment, there is nobody. There is life happening, which is love, baby. Yes, the answer is always found in what you are. Right here, right now, not in what you think. Thoughts lie. They don't mean to, but they just tell all types of narratives which are just about helping you survive. They're not about happiness or finding happiness or how to be happy. How to be happy is finding that which never moves, that which never leaves, that which is beyond thoughts. Thoughts will endlessly think about how to be happy if you live like this, if you do that, if you don't do that, if you live in flow, if you hear God speak, if you do this. I've got it, I've not got it, I've done it, I've not done it, I'm right, I'm wrong. Then what is it that never moves, that's here, that's beyond thinking? So alive and free. And it's not obtainable by you, but yet you are it. You are it, baby. So when you lose sense of that, your mind begins to tell you that pleasure is your happiness. And pleasure is what will free you. And what I mean by pleasure is by food, sex, money, house, different situation, travel, doing things. And this isn't true. But it's so illusory. And then by trying to get all these things, you kind of stress yourself out and exhaust your body, because you begin to work so hard in order to have all these things that you believe will make you happy. or you're just struggling to survive. But again, you work so hard that you are constantly in time. The you is seeking in time for relief, just if it's like you're working so hard and you're desperate for the day to finish. Or waiting for something else to happen. And it's also about avoiding pain. And this creates an identity, this creates seeking an identity. It makes you, it's an attachment to things and an attachment to time, an attachment to you. There is a you that exists that needs all these things to be happy. And then there is a living in that world, and it grows, and the mind begins to obsess about things, people, what it needs, what it doesn't need. And then before soon it's always in a story, and it has no connection to what it is beyond the story. The Buddha would say that that is suffering. That is suffering, to live like that. That is suffering. To live in time. Because it never ends, you know? I mean, obviously the body dies at some point, but in the human life it never ends. There's always one thing after another. You know, you think that you've got on top of something and that's the end of it and you can relax permanently, and then you could do it like this. Oops, up pops another thing. And then you think that's gone, and then up pops another thing. Yeah, it doesn't really work. Another thing. It's like that game, you know, where you have to hammer down the little gremlins and you get down as many as you can. You keep popping their heads up. And it's like, life is like that. I don't mean that it's a gremlin, but it's like it's going to constantly present you with obstacles. Constantly. You're never going to get this obstacle-free life. Like, I know you imagine that, you know, when this happens, when that happens, when I buy this, when I do that. But let me tell you, something else will pop its head up. And then something else. And if you believe in this story of you, in this story of happiness, you'll then begin to tell yourself it's because you failed, it's because you made a bad choice, it's because you did this, because you did that. And that's not true. That's not true. What is true is what you are, which is this experiencing, and this is your freedom. This is your freedom, the experiencing. It's so vast, and there's so much love and total contentment. You don't need all these things, but you think you do. You don't need to make all other people see how they're wrong and you're right, or it's not in that. It doesn't mean that the character doesn't adjust things to an extent, but it doesn't mean the character doesn't wobble and have moments, but it's that really the base freedom is right here, right now, and that is love. That is love. Yeah. Yeah. There is nothing you need to be free. Anything you tell yourself isn't true. And the problem is overworking yourself, trying to get all these things, and then melting down into suffering and exhausting your body. And then your chakras all close up. And, you know, by the time you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, you're just kind of like tight and living in your head, living in an imagination of what's happening rather than what's actually happening. Yes. So if you have any questions about what I've spoken about, you can ask me on Skype. Remember that call me, so wanting to speak to me gets priority. You can either write the question or call me, and write the question whenever you want. You don't have to wait for me to be in silence. I can't hear the messages and I just come to them when I'm ready. And you can send me a friend request now. It's Lisa Cairns 12. Yes.